Okay, so hey, how we all doing? We got about 45 people so far. I'm not going to keep too much track of it, but I'll try to keep track of the chat as best possible. My name is Eric Pincus. If you don't know me, you must know me in some capacity, either in person. I see some friends in the chat and some names I don't know. Some people from other countries is always awesome. I've been covering the Lakers for since 2002, covering the Clippers about the same amount of time. I do tend to get a little bit more Laker coverage. That's just been where the demand has been, and I do that for Bleacher Report. Although I do a lot of national stuff for Bleacher Report. I also publish salaries, player salaries at, I'm going to try to put this up. Let's see. Yep, wait, I turned this way. Nope, I did the wrong thing, or yes. No, I got it right, I think. Hard to tell. I'm still working on this. 1, 2, okay, 3. Okay, wait. Okay, that's it. Okay. Yep, I'll get it down. I'll get the button presses down perfect. This is Basketball Insiders. I publish all the player salaries here, and they're accurate. And if there's something you see wrong or confusing, let me know. I need to update all of these sheets for the new season. And I started with the teams that didn't make the bubble. When we had certain dates that the league had set, the league and the Players Union, the NBA, the NBA PA worked together. And they set some scheduled timelines, like the draft was going to be in October, the next season. Certain dates were going to start in October the next season, as far as the offseason was going to start in October. All that didn't happen. It's been pushed back. So I need to update, like here's the Hawks. And let me make sure that, yep, that's good. So you'll see you have the player salaries, and I'm prepping for next season. So I've listed things like their free agents, what their cap holds are. We'll talk a little bit about all that. Qualifying offers, all these things. And we have something here called deadlines, which kind of shows when they need to make these decisions. But this is now pushed back, and this is one of the things I need to do over the course, whether I do it live stream or whether I do it offline. I need to update the draft to be November 18th. I need to change this October 17th date for Scal, Damian Jones, Charlie Brown Jr., DeAndre Bembry for their qualifying offers to a later date, which is TBD. The NBA moratorium, we do not know when it's going to be. All of these things we need to apply to all 30 teams. But if you look at the table at the top, this will give you an idea of what they're making. I like to think I'm first to publish player salaries. I know there's other great people out there who do great work, so I don't want to diminish what they do. I do know there are a lot of sites that copy from me. Some give me credit, some do not. Whatever. I'm going to do my part to put out this information. Let me pull over the chat so I can see it here, because I can't see it when I'm looking at this camera. Okay, how we doing, folks? Let's take a look at the chat here. Everyone following me? How long am I planning to do the stream? I have no idea. I know that my youngest daughter has basketball practice training session at 4:30, so that's definitely the cap in time to get her out. But yeah, who knows? Don't know how long. We're just going to feel it out because this is my first one. I have no real feel for any of it at all. Where do I get my salary cap information? From other reporters? No. Adam, other reporters get it from me. That's my job. That's what I like to think is my job. That's my role in this. Hey, what's up, Ahmed? Longtime friend. I get my information where I get my information. That's privilege. I can't really discuss that. But I get accurate information. Sometimes there's things that are what's up, Ricardo? Some things are vague. For instance, Ben Simmons' number. Let's pull that up real quick. And hopefully this will stay working. I mean, so far so good. I'm actually pretty happy where we are technically after the first 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, so we're taking a look at Ben Simmons. All right, we're still good. All right. Ben Simmons' number for 2021, for 2020-2021, we don't know what it's going to be. The reason we don't know what it's going to be is that he got a max extension. And so in his contract, it doesn't say a number. It says the word max. The max won't be set until the salary cap is set. And so certain players are really dependent on the salary cap being high, right? The original projection was $115 million before the shutdown. And unfortunately, we are where we are. The current salary cap is 109. And what I think I want to do is kind of get started here in this sheet. So let me remember how to do this, right? If I Okay, that's one. Wait, I need to be looking over here, right? Okay. I'll get there. Let me close some of these windows. Give me a second. There we are. Okay. So I'm in this Google Sheet, and I recommend that you join us there. So I'm going to post just the Hawks as the starting point because you could also, here's the Hawks. And then I'll copy in, that's good enough. We'll start with the Hawks. All right, here's another link that is of great value, perhaps the greatest value of all. And so what I'm going to do is copy and move this over here. All right, so this is the Basketball Insiders pages, okay? These are the links that you need. This is Larry Kuhn's FAQ. Larry's an old friend of mine, Larry Kuhn's FAQ. I met Larry, I don't even remember anymore, 2002 or 3, probably 2001, 2002, over at the Summer League in Long Beach before it moved to Vegas. And Larry and I became fast friends and have stayed close friends for a long time. And we collaborate and we work together in the sports business classroom, which I know we have some of the alum here as well. And so Larry, his write-up of the FAQ is the ultimate place to learn how this works, okay? So if you want to know and you want to start in understanding how the NBA works, what are the rules of the NBA? We could talk about what's the travel rule, what's the gather, that extra step, what's the block charge? Those are those rules that are complex, right? Those are the rules that it's on the border of, is it the right call, is it not the right call? That you have these gray areas. That's like the joy of going through Larry's FAQ and figuring that stuff out. He breaks it down. He lays out the rules. What are the dimensions of the court? How does it all work? And where Larry is getting that from, multiple places, but the core of it is the CBA itself. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to pop a link in here for you as well. Okay. This is the NBA/NBPA salary cap, right? Rather, let's change it to CBA. I'll just call it the CBA. This is on the union's website. So you can go to the NBPA's website and you'll find this link. I'm making a shortcut so you don't have to navigate through that, but I recommend you check it out. Learn a little bit about how that functions. Reading the actual FAQ and reading the actual CBA are difficult jobs. They're lengthy. It's not easy reading. I don't recommend starting at the top and reading all the way through. Either one. If you want to read Larry's FAQ straight from start to finish, good for you. You want to read the CBA straight through, good for you. It's a little dense. What I would recommend is checking out different areas. Look up, for instance, if you want to learn how trades work. I don't want to go. I guess this is I haven't asked Larry's permission to stream his site, so I'm not going to pull it up, even though I'm not monetizing it. So it wouldn't be a breach of his terms of service. I don't want to, out of respect for Larry, I don't want to do that until I ask him. So I'm not going to pull up Larry's FAQ today, anyway. But he breaks down like the trades, how do trades work, what are cap holds, what are all the details. Everything you need to know is there. And where it all comes from is this third link. So this is your starting point. I'm going to drop in some knowledge here based on how things are. Okay. So this is where we are. Let me pull it up real quick and I'll drop it in. All right. Let's drop that in right. Oops. Let's drop it in right here. 30 seconds. Okay. Okay. There we go. All right, y'all see that? Someone hit me up on the chat. Make sure we're good. I'll wait. We good? I want to make sure that it's happening here. Okay, cool. All right. You never know. I've never done this before. I don't want it to be like the stream ended like 5 minutes ago and I'm sitting here talking to no one. So thank you. So a little bit of feedback just helps a little bit. The current cap is 2019-20. Okay. And the cap was projected, original, we're going to call this OG 2020, 21. It was projected to be 115, 123, 123. It's projected to be 139, 123, 123. Let me put in some of those. Okay. Oops. Left out a 0. Okay, so 115, 139. What is being discussed, and this is the question, do we stay here or do we stay flat? If we're flat, it's going to be the same, right? What if we drop? And let's call it 109. I'm just going to make up a number. I don't know if this is the right number. I think I'm missing the 0. That's just a complete made up. These are fake numbers here. So in this column, it's a fake number. Drop. Flat. Okay, so we kind of are looking at 3 scenarios. And so, and it could be anywhere in between, of course. There was some, I forget the source of the interview with Michelle Roberts. She suggested in an interview, it was a good one. I want to say it was The Athletic. I could be wrong. Shoot, I wish I had that in front of me. But she suggested that it should be the projected number, which would be 115, right? I struggle to believe that's what it'll be compromised at. So I'm going with my estimates as flat, okay? And Ali, you're asking, what's the probability that it does drop based on what I'm hearing? So it was with Shams. Thank you, Ali. And it was great. Shams is great. Shams is really good at what he does. So the way it works is that the players and the owners split the money that comes in, right? We're going to call it 50-50. And in a different stream, one day maybe we'll break down how it actually is split because it's a band of 49 to 51%. So it's not 50-50. But for the purposes of what we're going to do, we're going to call it 50-50, right? So if we say that the league BRI, which is basketball-related income, let's say it's 8 billion. 8, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. That's a lot of zeros. Okay. And I'm going to simplify this, so this is not entirely the way it's done, but it's darn close. Let's say the players get half of that. Okay, just saying, not exactly, but close. All right, so that's $4 billion to the players. Okay, well, let's say the BRI drops 40%, which is the number that Adam Silver suggested, without fans next year. Okay, so let's say that next year, instead of $8 billion, bear with me, fanless BRI, 4.8 billion, right? Can I scroll down? Good point. Thank you. Work with me. This is new for me. There it is. Okay, got it. I got to remember, scroll down when I do this stuff. Okay, so fanless BRI, right? That's 4.8 billion. So the player share, this is the main issue that we're dealing with. So the players would only be able to earn $2.4 billion next year instead of $4 billion. And if you think about it, how many contracts were signed years ago, right? Like Chris Paul and John Wall, or whatever. I mean, there's contracts everywhere, all over the place. We can look at some in a minute. I'm going to try to jump cameras. I'm still new at this. Yeah, there we go. Tobias Harris, right? Look at those contracts. Al Horford, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons has a new one, etc. All right, let's go back. Okay, I'm getting the hang of this. Okay, so here's the problem, right? How does all that money add up so that it's there? How do you make it so that the players are getting $2.4 billion when you got contracts that have been written all crazy, right? I'm going to drop that link one more time so everyone has it just in case. I have to learn how to maybe put it in the description. I don't know. I'm still new at this, so work with me. Let me copy that, share. Give me a second, copy link. In case you're not getting this Google Doc. I'll figure out how to do these a little bit better as far as sharing the link a little bit later. Okay. So, yeah, we have $2.4 billion, right? How do you line up all those contracts? So the challenge is the players get what's called an escrow. The league, this is normal circumstances. Normal circumstances. 10% escrow. Okay. Move this a little bit. Right? So if we have normal escrow, 10%. So let's say a player X, make sure you can see this, 10 million. 10, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So let's say a player earns 10 million. How much are they going to get? They're going to get 10% withheld. They're actually going to get paid 9 million. This is every year, right? Every player is getting 90% of their check, except this year. They deducted an additional amount, and I think the escrow was about 25% in the end this year. At the end of the year, they do their accounting, and if the players got too much, the league keeps that money. If not, the players get it back, okay? So we've had some years where players got their full escrow, got their full check. We've had some years where they've only gotten 90%. What we're looking at as a way to potentially fix this is to raise the escrow, okay? So I'm going to scroll back up. So if we had a $115 billion cap or $1 million cap, that escrow, here, I'm going to put a note here, add a few rows. Put in here escrow. In this case, we're going to say roughly, where's the tilde? 25%, okay? This could be 40%. This might be 30%. This might be 15%. I don't know, 17%, 15. We'll call it 15%. These are made up numbers. Some of them. This is not made up. This is, but it's still a tilde. It's still accurate estimate. Okay. So it's possible that we could get a $115 million salary cap, but that escrow would be such that a player, and I'll scroll down again. Okay, it's happening. It's all happening. All right. If this was instead of 10%, now you're making $6 million if you have a $10 million contract. So you could see, let me scroll again. All right, okay. So you can see the issue, right? Like if you're a player, how important is it for the league and for the teams to have cap room, but now you have to give back $4 million of your salary? First, maybe the teams have less cap room and you get to keep maybe $2 million, right? Let's say there's a 20% escrow, but you get to keep, but the teams don't have as much money, right? The luxury tax tends to rise and fall also. So that luxury tax can be a hard cap. It's not a hard cap in all cases, but it can be in some cases. And then some teams will treat it as such. Let's call maybe the Indiana Pacers are not willing to pay the tax. That's a team that historically avoids the tax. So it's not a hard cap for them, but in a lot of ways it's treated as such. So, all right, so how are we doing so far? Everyone follow me? Is there something that I've confused you on? Is there anything about this that doesn't make sense? Hit me up in the chat. I want to make sure that I'm not losing people and that everyone's on the same page. And I want you to help me direct where we're going to take this conversation. Okay, good. Ali, thank you. If it's Ali or if I'm saying the names wrong, let me know. You can do it phonetically. So the main issue here, how much do the existing players want to give up money to raise the salary cap so other players can get paid? Does that make sense? If you think about it, no. Like to me, if I'm the players, I want the cap to drop, but not too far. I want it to be that if you're LeBron, that the Lakers still have a chance to field a team. That if you're the Nets, that you're not looking at something outrageous, right? Like a huge tax bill for this team that they put together this team, the Nets, not with 1920 in mind, but with 2021 because they knew KD was hurt. So they're in a great spot, right? And who is making these decisions, right? Who's the power in the league? The power in the league is Chris Paul. He's the president. Andre Iguodala, he's under contract. LeBron, I don't know if he's as active as he had been, but he's still a very powerful influence on the NBA across the board. How important is it for Jimmy Butler to give up money from his salary so some other schmo, from his point of view, of course, can get paid? Does that make sense to Jimmy Butler? Right? So I haven't, Asman, I haven't gotten into the exceptions, and I think that's a good place to go. This is the issue with the cap itself, okay? So I think I've kind of illustrated what the issue is with the cap. Where does it get set? I'll throw in, before we get into the exceptions, from the league's point of view and from the agent's point of view and the player's point of view, really, you have a very different philosophical view of this whole thing. This is always where the fight is, okay? The fight is the owners who own the teams will, in theory, survive this crisis, this drop in income. The value of their franchises will climb over time. And let's say that they have to sell right now because they're losing too much money and they can't survive this shutdown world. They're probably going to make a massive profit. I don't want to say probably. They're going to make a massive profit. They're going to make a ton of money in selling their team. Teams that were bought for 300, 400 million are going to be sold for about $1 billion or $1.5 billion, $2 billion, right? So from the player's point of view, you have your LeBrons who play 20 years maybe, your Vince Carters, maybe Chris Paul, guys who get to the 10 plus. But you have hundreds of dudes who get 3-4 years in the league, and that's it. Would they lose this next year, if they give up too big of an escrow or the cap isn't high enough or all these issues? It's money they can never get back. And so from the player's point of view, they would like the owners to eat as much of this as possible, spread out the losses over years. And so there's going to be a fight between the union and the league to solve this, to come up with a compromise. And it's not going to make everyone happy. I personally am going with it staying flat. So we're going to unbold this, and we're going to stick with this. So we're going to go with the notion that it stays flat. And with it staying flat, we're going to stick with a 25% escrow. I've got some sort of reminder. All right. So let's copy this over here. So let's say if it's flat, it's flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a little something here. Give me a second. We're going to stay up here. And I'm going to show you what would have happened at these different points. All right, let me throw this in here. I'm doing it in another sheet. Next cap, we'll call it 115. 115, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. Okay. The mid-level would be this. Hopefully I get this done correctly. Okay. The MMLE, the BAE. Try this. Room. Okay. Momentarily paste that in. Okay. The early bird, these are set differently. These are going to be about 10 million. Not exactly 10 million. 10, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Regardless, these do not rise and fall with the cap. They rise and fall based on the average salary. And these numbers will not be the same. This will probably, I could reverse engineer it. But for the sake of argument, let's just drop in a 1 here. It'll be like a little bit more, roughly. All right, so that. Okay, that's going to be the same. If it's flat, it's flat. And if it drops, let me throw in a drop. 100, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, almost gotcha. Okay. Change those colors. Reset. Okay. All right, so if you take a look here, the mid-level would drop, or it was supposed to be 9.8 about at 115. That's dropping and staying flat in theory. at 9.3. If the cap dropped, that would drop to 8.5. Exceptions drop, etc. But really what might matter most are these numbers here. The luxury tax numbers. Because, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Okay. I'm going to make a note here. Triggers a hard cap. Triggers a hard cap. Two things, okay? The hard cap, I'm going to get that number for you. Currently, have that around here. So here we are. Is that. Okay. All right, so let's say you have a team that right now is at 125 million. And let's say they use the MLE. We'll just copy that there. And that. And they need to fill out their roster with vet min. And let's say that's 1620564. Okay. You're going to find, in theory, if I did the math right, I might be off a little bit, but I think we're good. Over the hard cap, illegal. So what we're going to find, if the tax drops low enough, that these teams are going to not be able to use this. So a team say, oops, can't use. Okay, and so what that would look like would be this. Let me copy that. Nope. And instead of this, they're going to do another vet minimum. Does it get them there? Nope, still can't use. So now they're going to go to 85, 85, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I think I have one too many zeros. Give it a moment. Just a moment. Going to copy that in here. Equals this minus that. Under hard cap. All right. So what happened here is that instead of having the ability to send out, to sign dudes to this plus this, let's say that they only have this much to spend. So that's not an extreme example, but it's showing what could be problems. So let's say that you also have your own free agent. We could use the Lakers, because I know we have a lot of Laker fans here, as an example, right? And let's pop in here the Lakers salary. Give me a second, I got to scroll down. Okay. Try to make this fit. Okay. Okay. And let's say, let me adjust the cap back up in my system back to what I expect it to be. Give me a second. Copy that back to 109, 140. And almost there. Try that again. These numbers shift a little bit. Okay, there we are. Let's say that we want to figure out how much cap room the Lakers might have. Well, this would be their max situation. They have LeBron, Danny Green, their first rounder, Kuzma, Caruso, THT. They have a bunch of empty roster charges. Call it a roster charge. The way it works is that you need to have, and I'll move this over, you need to sign, this is kind of abstract, but you're signing, you're using your cap room to sign your 13th player. That's the best way to look at it, because you have to have at least 13 players on your team. So you plug in 12, and if you are missing players, you plug in these roster charges, which are rookie minimums. Because at least if you're going to flesh out your team, you know that you're going to have at least to pay out to a bunch of rookies if you're going to fill a team. If you have to get to 13 the cheapest way possible, you spend the minimum over and over again. It's not how it works, realistically, but it's how the system works to compute cap room. Lakers could get to $34 million in cap room. But the challenge, of course, is that they're going to try to keep Mr. Anthony Davis. And so if we say that the cap is, make sure I got the room for this on the page. Okay. Let's say the cap is 109, 140. The max for AD is 30% of that. Okay. So let's say that the Lakers do re-sign AD. And they cannot re-sign him. They cannot sign someone else and then re-sign him. His max cap hold, basically by having his rights, he takes up basically as much as it would take to re-sign him. So unless they lose AD, which I do not expect. Oops, one too many zeros. Okay, and if I change this to a sum, some of the pratfalls of going from Excel to Google Sheets. Okay, and then we do this minus that. And let's do it the opposite way. Let's do negative. We'll call it salary cap. Whoops. Team salary, and we'll say over the cap. All right, so the Lakers will not have cap room. Okay? You follow me so far? Ask questions if you don't. I know this can be complex, and it's easy to lose somebody on this. I'm trying to break it down from the basics. Okay, cool. I'm looking at Deddy, which I assume is David. If a team like this get a free agent to agree to their full mid-level, they have to be aware it could cost them one of their own free agents because of the hard cap. Kind of. Yes and no. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do is we've established that the Lakers do not have cap room. We're making the assumption that AD stays. I think that's a good assumption, but you don't know. Stranger things have happened. Additionally, the Lakers have a couple of guys who we don't know what they're going to do, but they might opt in, and I'm going to assume that they do. Because Avery did not play late, and I don't know if there's a market where he'll get $5 million. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. These are player options. We're going to assume for now they opt in. Okay. So we're still under that tax, and I think there's two lines. There's tax. The tax we said was 132. Under the tax. That's spelled wrong. I'll fix that in a second. Let's do it where it's we'll do this minus that. Okay. I feel like no, we're over the cap, so this should be a negative. So this would be tax. This would be team salary minus tax for consistency. And let's fix the typo. Oops, we're off the screen. Here we go. Okay. Bear with me. I'll get this. I might have to shrink this. I don't know how to zoom a little bit. I have to see how I can zoom. It's getting a little big for our britches here. We're kind of losing some of the page. It doesn't quite fit. See if I can zoom this way. Yeah, and let's go a little lower. Can y'all still read that? That's still readable? I just shrunk it a little bit. You still can see, yep. Okay. We're just running out of space. I'm still getting a feel for it, how this is all gonna work in in this stream situation. All right, so we've established. Let's see. There's one more number. Over. Oops. Wow, that is a little small. I might have to need. Hope I don't need glasses to do the stream. Over. Let's do apron. So the apron is this number here. I'm going to make a note here. Soft cap. They are not beholden to that apron because they've done nothing to trigger a hard cap. Let's do under the apron, and that equals team salary minus the apron. Okay, and so not an issue if they're over. Okay, so we've opted in these two dudes. We let Quinn Cook go, but let's say we don't. Okay, he's $1 million guaranteed. Okay, we're going to take out that stretch number. We'll talk about that in another day. Can't teach everything all at once. All right, so we're going to go back to the list. Who else? Well, we dealt with AD. And that leaves a couple more options. Right. Copy this in here. I'll just put it on the side. Yep, that should show. Rondo and KCP. So we're going to show one of the issues the Lakers might have. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pencil in a mid-level player. So they spend, this is the non-taxpayer. Okay. So that would be this number here. And we're going to pencil in the BAE, which is the biannual exception. And there. Okay. So now they have a hard cap. Okay. Triggered a hard cap. Triggered. I'll just copy and paste. I think that's typo. Trigger. I don't know how to spell anymore. Okay. Something like that. Okay, so now they do have a hard cap. So I'm going to change that to hard cap. Issue if they go over. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to add in, let me make sure you can see all this. Okay. We're going to move Lil Dang down a little bit. He's dead money. Nothing you can do about that. And remember that the Lakers, oops, that didn't take. The Lakers can go to 15, not including two ways. We're not really talking about two ways. That's a different conversation. K-Cock is still under contract. But I'm going to, let's see. So let's pencil in Antetokounmpo. Let's say the Lakers are still in the what if we can get Giannis business. I'm not saying that's why they have his younger brother, but I'm also not saying it's not what they did. Just in case. And let's say they sign him at the minimum, which will be 1620564 for him. Oops, off by a number. Okay. We're getting closer and closer to that number. So at this point, the Lakers are still under the tax, and they're still under the hard cap. But now we have two of these roster spots for Rondo and KCP. So if they opt in, the Lakers are team salary 140, 109. So let me make sure I got it right. I want to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. Okay. They're at 104, 140. The tax is 132, so they are over the tax. And I don't think that's a problem for the Lakers. I think when you've got LeBron James and AD, and you're thinking about winning a championship, that you're not worried about paying tax. That's my opinion. I don't think I'm right. Cousins isn't. Are you talking about? Yeah, the BAE triggers the hard cap. That is correct. The biannual exception triggers the hard cap for Deddy. Cousins, was that a question of whether they're signing DeMarcus Cousins? That's certainly a possibility. All right, but that's not the question. We're not here to speculate on big picture. I'm just trying to paint out a picture here. This applies to the Lakers. We're using them as a case study, but it applies to all the teams in the league and why the tax number matters. Okay, so we got Rondo. You got KCP opting in. The team salary is 140. They are not only over the cap, they're also over the tax, and they are over the apron. This would be illegal. So now let's go back, and what we're going to do is we're going to cut Quinn Cook. Sorry, Quinn Cook, this is just an exercise. This has nothing to do with reality, although it might. We'll see. So let's say they cut Quinn Cook. They pay him his $1 million, but they pay it out over 3 years, 333. Okay, and let's say that they do not fill out the rest of their roster. They go into the season with 14 players. Okay. Now we're looking at over the tax, under the hard cap, right? They're at 137. Here's their total. They have a hard cap. It's 138. Okay, so that's with Rondo and KCP opting in. And I think what I want to do, because I don't want to lose this, is I'm going to copy this. And we're going to scroll down. Okay. But let's say that things change. Let's say Rondo opts out, and the Lakers, who have his early bird rights, choose to pay him $6 million to reward him for his service. And let's say KCP opts out, and let's change this to not blue anymore. And let's say they want to reward KCP with $12 million for what he's done. Remember, he's the reason why the Lakers got to know Rich Paul and led to getting LeBron. And I thought KCP really delivered for them. And he's a clutch client, which is the agent of LeBron and AD. And maybe they want to reward him. Oops, I think I lost a few numbers here. Hold on. Try that again. Okay. Oops. That's crazy. Okay. Do that instead. And do this instead. Okay. And tax equals that. And I see what I did wrong. I know what I can do differently. I'm a little more accustomed to Excel than Google Sheets, but that's fine. All right. Here we are. Scroll it back. Okay. So here's the problem. Let's say that the Lakers pay KCP and they pay Rondo $6 million, $18 million to the two of them. And Avery opts in, JaVale opts in. They cut Cook to try to save some of this tax money. They use the minimum to sign Kostas. And really have the same team back. They keep their pick, et cetera, et cetera. That is about $144 million. That is over the tax and over the cap, but it is also over the hard cap, over the apron, which is illegal. So this is not possible. So if it's not possible, well, let's say they don't use their biannual. Okay. Take out the biannual. Still over. 140. Well, what will basically happen is this will drop down to the taxpayer MLE. And if we go down to the taxpayer MLE, I think I have that. Did I put that up here? 5718. Taxpayer. Okay, there you go. And let's put Cook back in here. Oops. Congratulations, Quinn Cook. You have a job again. Give me a moment. Quinn Cook, 3 million, 123, NG, well, 1 mil G. That stands for guaranteed. And I'm not saying they keep or don't keep him. He didn't really play, but I did notice he was awfully close with AD and awfully close with LeBron. And if he ends up being the next James Jones, who was a part of LeBron's runs, even though he didn't always have a major role on the court, that's not something I'm going to discount. I'm not saying it happens, but these are factors that go into these decisions that are beyond what happens on the court, arguably, sometimes. And so 39 million, 32 million, 15, their first, Kuzma, Caruso, THT, Bradley, McGee, Cook, taxpayer mid-level E, does not trigger a hard cap, cannot use the biannual, now have soft cap, not an issue. Doesn't matter that they're paying out 139 million. So they can pay these players and they're limited. So what's the limit? So yeah, James Jones is the current GM of the Suns. So hanging out with LeBron, and he contributed. James Jones was a solid role player. And so what you have is you have at this team, right? Let's say this is the team. You're probably going to try to re-sign Dwight, Markieff, may need to make roster space to do so. Cook, question mark. That's pretty much it, right? Yeah. Costas, I'll at least put a question mark. Let's say that Giannis signs a supermax and is out of the equation. How loyal are the Lakers to Costas? I don't know. He's a project that they've been developing. Maybe they want to continue to develop that. Maybe not. Maybe they want to bring back Dwight and Markieff. I would assume Cook goes out. There's enough room to bring back Dwight. But what you see is the Lakers are returning the exact same team. They've got their first-round pick to develop, and it's the same team otherwise. But this is giving KCP and Rondo a raise, right? So it's possible that they opt in, and the Lakers do use. We had some scenarios earlier. If they opt in, you can make it work, right? Like in this particular scenario, we were at 137 in team salary. They're fine. So if KCP and Rondo opt in, they can use their mid-level exception, their full one. They can use their biannual exception. But they have to be careful when it comes to, filling out the rest of the roster. They have to figure out how to make room for Dwight or Markieff or whatever. And there's always the trade options. There are other options. I see someone asked about stretching McGee and Cook. I do have them stretching Cook at 333 a year. So that is right here, the stretch. Right here is the stretch of Cook. I do think the Lakers have their eyes on future opportunities. I don't think they're stretching JaVale. I think what the solution then would be trade, and that's a whole different story. So we can talk about that momentarily. So the takeaway that I want you to get out of this is that the Lakers are, and by the Lakers we're talking about all 30 teams, are going to be limited in if this number drops too low. Right up here. Let me make sure. Okay. So luxury tax. So if we're here, okay, this is the current luxury tax, and let's throw in the apron. And let's say the apron is, I'm not going to compute the exact ones, but let's throw in, it's about 6.3 million hard cap. Okay. Okay, that took hard cap, right? And then we've got here, this would be a bigger one. Let's call it this plus 6. I'm just going to make up a number. I think that's it. Yeah. And then this would be apron. Let's do, instead of 6.3, let's do 6.1. Yeah, close enough. Oops, can't be 6.1. It needs to be 6, 1, 1, 2, 3. Wait, 1, 6, 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. Okay. So if we're taking a look at this, we don't know what the cap is going to be, but if the cap drops to 100 million, which is closer to what the numbers actually dictate, if not worse, then this hard cap is going to be really, really low. at 131, which is going to make it so that most teams cannot use this number here and this number here. It's going to constrict spending power. Whoop, that's not what we want. If the cap and the tax drop low enough, say to 100 million, then basically teams are going to have this number to spend. Make it orange. Hope if anyone's colorblind, let me know. Sometimes that's an issue, and I can walk through it a little differently. But see this orange number? Basically teams are only going to have 5 million to spend if the cap drops low enough. So this is where, when you're the union, you have to decide how much is it worth giving away some of my money. The escrow, let's raise it from 15% in this $100 million situation to say 25% or 35%. Let's change this to 25%. Actually, I think it'll be closer to 30. So let's stick it with that. I think we're at 25 this year. I think it'll be closer to 30 next year. So let's say that you do a 30% escrow. Is it worth giving up an extra 15% so that teams can spend another 8.5 million and another 3.3? Well, another 9.2 rather. If they can spend, if you're going to allow teams to spend in general 9.3 and 3.6, is that better than limiting almost all teams to 5? The union has to make that decision for the greater good of the league, right? Of the players. If you have 4 teams that are under the cap, Knicks, Hawks, Pistons, if the cap drops low enough, maybe not even the Hornets, but at 109, the Hornets would have some cap room. And that's it. Maybe the Suns, if they don't keep Saric, go under the cap. Probably stay over. Okay, so if you're looking at 4 teams with cap room, that's not that significant. Almost everyone else is going to have in the neighborhood of 9.3 to 3.6. And there's going to be a handful of teams maybe that have just the tax mid-level, the lower mid-level, which would be like the Warriors, right? They have just 5.7 to spend. But if the cap and the tax are low enough, then almost all teams, other than it's going to come down to 3 teams are over the cap now, or under the cap. It's going to be the Pistons, the Knicks, and the Hawks. Hornets won't have enough cap room to make any noise. Maybe a little, maybe fit 14, 13 million in cap room. That's not really enough. And everybody's going to be limited to 5 million instead of 13 million, 12 million, 13 million. You see what the battle will be for the union and the league to try to figure out what's best. I'm going to stick for now with it being flat. And when we get to a specific case, and we're talking the Lakers, if they're going to reward Rondo and KCP for their service, it's going to limit how they can add to their team because of that apron. Does that make sense? I think that's kind of the main point I want to say. That's kind of the lesson that we've had here. Some of the solutions, as noted by like Wagner or Wagner, depends if you go with like Mo Wagner, the actual German spelling or pronunciation, it sounds like Wagner. So I'm going to assume it's Wagner. They can trade, right? Like let's say that the Lakers have somebody who's willing to come at 9.3, and they want to go and get, I know that we all saw we saw LeBron go to Jeremy Grant and buddy up with him at the end of that Nuggets series. The Nuggets can totally outpay the Lakers for Jeremy Grant. It's not even a question. Will they? I don't know. I'm going to assume the answer is yes, and that the Lakers have no shot at Jeremy Grant. But if we say that LeBron wants Jeremy Grant and the Lakers make an offer for Jeremy Grant, not saying he takes it because he probably takes the Nuggets' bigger offer, they can offer 9.3. If they're paying him 9.3, they're going to be capped in what they can pay KCP and Rondo as a reward. They could trade away JaVale McGee, but if you're sitting away 4.2, you are going to have to fill that roster spot, and it's going to be either a rookie at at 900,000-ish, or it's going to be a veteran for about 1.6 million. I'm not going to get too much into it, but like a veteran like Dwight can get paid 2.6. Dwight can actually get 3 million with his non-bird rights, and we'll talk about that stuff either later or at a different time. Dwight can get 3 million to return, but an average, like let's say they paid Markieff the minimum to come back, and let's say that minimum for him was 2.3 million. It's only going to hit the Lakers' books at 1.6. That's just the way it works when it comes to minimums. We're not going to get too deep into that right now. So the Lakers would have the ability to sign other guys, but if they're going to reward KCP and Rondo. So this is the Like Rondo, KCP are going to have a hard time making their decisions until they know where the cap is set. And if it does climb to 115 and that tax line is, the apron is what we said, 145, well, then they should get raises. They should ask for raises and they should get them. And the Lakers will be in the tax and it might cost them millions of dollars. But shouldn't the Lakers pay tax for this team? Just want a title. Taking care of KCP, who from his point of view started at 17, dropped to 12, dropped to what he is now, and has this option here at 8.5. For him, he's playing on a discount. We could debate whether that's true. Decisions are made from the point of view of the decider, not from us on the internet. And so Asman's asking, regarding the timing of the non-taxpayer MLE, does a team have to be below the tax after they use it, or do they need to be below before they use it? So any team that's under the cap does not have any of those. I'm going to copy these here, right here. Make sure you can see that. There's room. There's mini. There's MLE. Okay. So answering this question here, these are for over the cap teams, under the cap teams. My most common typo. Everyone's most common typo. Okay. They 100% do not get MLE or MMLE, and then they 100% do not get room MLE. So there's one mid-level. Each team gets one mid-level. They either get MLE, MMLE, which is mini MLE, or they get RMLE, the room MLE. Okay. You don't have a choice. If you drop under the cap, those are gone, never to be recovered. And when you climb, and when I say never, during that season, the next season, you get it. It's resets, and we see where you are then. If you drop under the cap, you don't get those back. You do gain the room exception by going under the cap. So as you can see, the room exception is 4.7. The mini is 5.7. The MLE is 9.3. Also under the cap, you lose BAE, which is biannual exception. Okay. Now, when to answer Asmin or Asmin, I hope I'm saying it right. Do my best. When it comes to the mid-level, you have a choice, right? So what teams will do is they might use some of this and just call it MLE and pay out $5 million, right? So you do not. I think I have one too many zeros. Yeah, you did not trigger hard cap. Okay. Now you kind of have the flexibility here, and then you could then say, all right, we're going to also spend $3 million. We've now spent over that mini MLE number. So that's the threshold. Okay? So the moment that you spend over that amount, okay, hard cap. So it's not like you spend $5 million and say we want to use the non-taxpayer MLE. Okay? If you spend less, you spend less. You don't have a hard cap. If you don't use your biannual, you don't have a hard cap. The moment that you use a dollar of your biannual, you have a hard cap. The moment that you spend over 5.718, so spend 5718, 123, not a hard cap. Let me copy and paste that. Spend hard cap. Let me finish this. Let me adjust that. There you go. You spend $1 more, now you have a hard cap. That's simple. So a team might come to terms with somebody at a $5 million deal and they haven't decided how they're going to approach things. Do they want a hard cap? Do they not want a hard cap? They don't have to decide that yet. $5 million. Now you've decided to spend another $3 million of it, or whatever. Now we've got a hard cap, and once you have a hard cap, you can't ever go over. You cannot go over the hard cap, period. I think I understand that part, but what's confusing me is the taxpayer part. If you're $4 million below the tax line, you can still use your full, yeah. So what you're looking at is the salary. So let me find an example. See if we have an example of a team in the tax. We might not, because there weren't that many tax teams. Boston, Brooklyn, nope. Charlotte, Chicago, no. I don't know if we had any real. Cleveland ended up just under. Dallas. What about OKC? No, because they didn't use their mid-levels. I don't think they used it. We may not have an example this year. I like to give you examples. I think those are like the best teaching tools. No, they used a tiny bit of their mid-level. The Thunder did. So that's not going to work. Summary. I've got a. What tax teams do we have? We have this view will help me. Minnesota was actually a tax team, weren't they? Total salary 132. Maybe not. OKC, no. Trailblazers. Do they use their mid-level? No. So I don't think we have a great example. And then Miami. No. So we don't have any real good examples this year. So the way it works here, and I want to make sure I'm answering the question. Okay. So you're saying if you're $4 million below tax line, can you still? So if you're $4 million below the tax line, so let's say you're a team. Let's go a little bit lower. Team. So the tax line is, so let's do the tax line. Okay, so this is the tax. You're saying you're $4 million below tax. So team salary equals this minus 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Team salary is that. You want to know, can you use 9.2 million? So MLE, full MLE, we'll call it. Okay, so copy that number. Okay, so what is the new team salary? Oops. Okay, hard cap. Under. So that's your example right there. So the answer is yes. If you are under the tax, you can be in the tax and still use the biannual. You can be in the tax and still use the mid-level above that taxpayer, non-taxpayer. Like the literal use of the words non-taxpayer mid-level exception, you would think would be exclusively for non-taxpayers, right? Doesn't that make sense logically? You'll find that there's always, I don't want to say always, but there's a lot of illogical kind of misnomers in the CBA and the rules that just don't fully encompass the premise. So you can use your non-taxpayer, or you can use your taxpayer mid-level exception and finish above the tax as long as you're not above the apron. So the key here is to understand that you could use it, but you have to make sure that all of the numbers add up and don't take you over that tax line. You can never go over that tax line no matter what, and there's all these little complications. If you sign a rookie that you didn't draft at $900,000, it's going to pad it a little bit of money to push up the tax value of that. There's all kinds of, I don't want to get into the minutia of it, but they've tried to close loopholes to make sure that guys aren't signing like just rookies to avoid the tax. All right, does that make sense? I think I explained it. So is there a way you can use your full mid-level and or biannual and not be hard capped? The answer is no. You're always hard capped if you use your full mid-level above the non-taxpayer, rather above the taxpayer. Wait, make sure I'm saying it right. So I think I said these backwards. So yeah, so there's the non-taxpayer mid-level is the bigger one. So no, that's the small one. I use let's see, minimum taxpayer, non-taxpayer, because you're spending 9.2. This is the taxpayer. It's the bigger one. So what we just established was that you could be a taxpayer, spend the 9.3, which is the non-taxpayer, which doesn't make sense logically, which is where we're getting hung up. But if you use any amount over 5.7 using the current numbers, you then have a hard cap. There's no way to use the biannual. There's no way to spend more than this. And I'll add one more trigger. Sign and trade in a player triggers a hard cap. That's just a little note here, okay? So, for instance, the Pacers acquired Brogdon, right? Via sign and trade from the Bucks. Indiana had a hard cap. S and trade in, right? Milwaukee did not. By virtue of that, sign and trade out. Okay? Let me take a look and make sure I'm not misleading in any way. I don't believe the Bucks had a hard cap this year, but they might have for other purposes. No, they did not have a hard cap. They did not use their biannual. They were a cap team. They were under the cap. So they used their room exception on RL, Robin Lopez. So there you have it. So that answers that question, I think. Can Clutch and Lakers talk to KCP opt in for next year, extend with bird rights? So the issue on an extension is that KCP is on a 2-year deal, right? He re-signed on a 1-year deal, and he would opt in for the second year. So there's some issues with extensions. I would want to look at. Let me pull that up. Oops, I don't want to put Larry's thing on screen. So sorry, Larry. I got to open it up in another window because I haven't gotten permission from Larry, and I wouldn't want to. Okay, make sure that didn't come up on screen. Okay, give me a second. I'm going to pop this over here. Okay, so let me just make sure. Remind me what we were looking at. Okay, extensions. See, I still, even though I'm supposed to be, which I would like to think I'm somewhat of an expert, I don't know if there is such a thing. And maybe I'm being humble, but I know how complicated these things can be. So I don't like to overstate what I know. I just know that even in the best of circumstances, you still need to look stuff up because these things are complicated. They really are. Yeah, you have to have a contract longer than 2 seasons to sign an extension. KCP signed a 2-year deal. It's a 1+1, and therefore he's not extension eligible. But my point being is that as much as I know, which I've been doing this for literally a couple decades now, not quite, almost 2 decades, I still reference the FAQ for quick answers. I still reference the CBA for more complex questions. And I try not to remember everything in the top of my head because it's hard to make all that room and then keep track of what teams are and et cetera. So no, KCP cannot be extended. What they can do with KCP is he can opt out and he can sign a new deal. He can opt in, and then the next year they're going to have full bird rights and they can re-sign him. They could restructure. I'd have to double check if they can restructure because I think there's a limit. They don't have cap room, we've established, so no, they can't restructure. But if AD left, in theory, but again, they didn't. I don't think they had him long enough to restructure him. Same kind of issue. Well, the issue would be is that they can't extend him. So technically, they might be able to give him a raise via cap room, but they wouldn't be able to extend him. So that's a good question. See, that's where we get into those interesting areas where it's like, could you restructure? I guess you could restructure a player up and not extend them. And what's the requirements there? You would need cap room. Lakers won't have cap room, so it's just a thought exercise. All right, so let's see. Ken Clutch, and that was that. What's the most Lakers can pay Rondo with early bird rights? That's a good question. Early bird, if you take a look here in my table, I have it at a flat cap at about 10.1. So I'm not sure how much I want to get into the weeds, and that would probably be a different lesson when we start talking about things like rights. We kind of covered a topic here about the tax and how much spending power in the hard cap and how that could limit teams like the Lakers and by extension all 30 teams that might have this issue, except for the few that'll probably be under the cap. But the way that the early bird exception works, they take the average salary of what everybody made in 2019-20, the previous year. Then they use a formula to multiply it times a certain number. So while the room exception, the biannual, what draft picks make, first round picks make, almost everything is tied to the rise and fall of the salary cap. The early bird exception is not. It is a number that is based on the average salary. And from doing some preliminary research, I don't have the exact number, but I can estimate it'll be right around 10 million. That's the number I'm using for that. We'll call it 10-1. So if we go to Rondo, I'm going to scroll down here. Okay, if we say 10, whoops, that did not work. Okay, 10, 100, 1, 2, 3. That's the early bird number. Okay. The way it works with early bird is you take a look at what the player made in the previous season. So in the case of Rondo, okay, make sure that's working. Okay. So this is what Rondo made last year. Okay. If you multiply it times 1.75, that's the most that the Lakers can pay via early bird, or the early bird number itself. The Lakers or any early bird team, this the player who has early bird rights, can pay up to 175% of previous salary or the EB, early bird number, whichever is higher. So the Lakers can pay Rondo up to 10.1 million to stay. And the issue there becomes if they are, then they're probably limited to the taxpayer mid-level of 5.7. So you have a choice. Limit what you pay Rondo. Just a moment, I'm going to copy and paste these things. Let's what's today? Today is 10/13/20. Okay. All right. We'll call this MLE, and we're going to do NT MLE, non-taxpayer MLE. Let me make sure you can see this. Okay. And we total that up. Sum. So total to spend. Okay. So the question would be, if you're paying Rondo 10, 100, 1, 2, 3, and if you're paying NTMLE, rather, we'll call it the MMLE, mini MLE. Okay. So this is how much spending power you are executing. Okay. If you pay Rondo something less, like his option, Rondo opts in. Where are we? There you are. Rondo via opt-in, Rondo with that and that. So in a sense, you have an equivalent amount of money, give or take, on what you can spend. Let me bring this into view. Okay. So you can basically pay him his minimum and use 9.3 and 3.6 and spend 15.6. Or you could spend 10.1 to Rondo, 5.7, and 15.8. You're actually spending more this way. It's just a question of, the Lakers are going to have limited resources just based on the rules. Do you want to put that money into Rondo to reward him for what he's accomplished and what you believe he'll be able to accomplish the next year? Or is he willing to stay for less and get him at a discount, maybe pay him more the next year, and then use the mid-level to bring in another player, bring in the biannual? Same issue with KCP. And again, this issue applies to all teams. So far, all the questions have been Laker questions. Maybe that has to do with posting this on Lakers Ground. I know a lot of my followers are Laker fans, but I'm happy to answer questions beyond the Lakers. So you need MLE for winger or ball handling guard with threes. I don't know what the Lakers are going to need as far as money. It's a good question, right? So if you look at it from the perspective, and this is again for all teams, if 4 teams have cap room, okay, most teams will have 9.3 mil to offer, okay? Some teams will have 3.6 mil. The 4 teams under the cap will also have 4.7 mil beyond their cap room, okay, with their room exception. So for guys who want to get paid, that should be 5.7 mil. There you go. Okay. So some teams will have 9.3, some will have 5.7. The 4 teams will have anywhere from 19 to 46 mil to spend. Okay. So we're talking Knicks, Hawks, Pistons, Hornets. Maybe the Suns, but if they keep Saric, they're over the cap, not under. And the team was a beast in the bubble, and Saric was part of that. Who knows? We don't know what they're going to do. He is restricted, so it's not up to him necessarily. It's partially up to him, but mostly up to the Suns, what they want. So if we've got 4 teams with this amount of money to spend, how many players are going to get paid $9.3 million? Like most, that's going to be their cap. There's not going to be that many 9.3 millions to go around. As we established, there's your big money from your 4 teams on some level. But the Hornets aren't going to go after certain players, right? This is a team that is probably needing a few years of player acquisition to be a competitive team. The Pistons are in the middle, where you could argue that with Blake Griffin, if they keep Christian Wood, with Derrick Rose, maybe they decide to add valuable players that they think could compete and maybe give them a shot to get in at the bottom of the East. Maybe. If it were up to me, I would recommend that they take a longer route and make wise long-term decisions that aren't about winning now. The Hawks are loaded with young talent. You could argue they should use their cap room to get more veteran players to help push them over the edge. The Knicks are looking for star power. I could see them get 1 or 2 stars. I could see them getting no stars. I could see them getting a star they shouldn't get, who makes too much money. We float out there like Russell Westbrook, right? Maybe they go for, I'm not saying the Rockets trade him, but who knows? But when we start getting into good role players, I'm not sure. Did we lose my audio? Let me just type this in here. How are we doing? Did we lose my audio? I see Daddy's heard what I said, right? Okay, it's fine. Okay, just checking. So, okay, cool. Not sure what to tell you, AK, if you have no audio. It's left ear only? I don't know. Might be you. Anyway, let me know if you hear me in your right ear. I think we're going to start to wind it down anyway. But just to kind of put a bow on all this, if you only have 4 teams that can spend this offseason, what's the market going to be for those players who aren't getting that cap money, right? You're going to be looking at, let's say this is just made up. Oops, sorry, typing that in the chat. Try that again. Made up. Let's say 4 cap teams. Let's say 4 tax teams. Again, this is made up. 4 tax teams. That's 8, right? That leaves 22 MLE teams. But if the tax line is low enough and teams are re-signing players they want, that MLE, that tax list may grow to 10 to even 15, but let's say 10 to 12. Okay, so we may find that 10 to 12 teams have 5.7 mil to spend. Teams, by virtue, let me fix this in a second, virtue of a low tax line / apron, okay, and re-signing their own players. Scroll down a little bit. Okay. All right, so we have 10 to 12 teams that have 5.7 million to spend by virtue of a low tax, and then we have 4 that are four under the cap. So we'll have 14 to 16, right? That would be 14 to 16. So 14 to 16 teams that have 9.3 mil to spend. And we have to remember, teams can usually pay more to keep their guys. But the market will probably be 9.3 mil, and there's only so many teams who will pay that, who can pay that, if the tax line / apron is an issue. So this is what the league is facing. So if you're talking about re-signing KCP, okay, what's the market? If it's 9.3 mil, you pay him 12 mil, to pay him a little bit more than what he can get in the market. A stingy team pays 10 mil. So let's call it 10 to 12 mil. To me, that's the market for KCP if he was in demand and the Lakers were competing. They would need to pay him 10 to 12. Now, KCP is a different situation because he's on LeBron's agency. He may be willing to work with LeBron and stay for his option number, which is in the ballpark of that, and then maybe sign more next year. Lots of politics that go into all these decisions. But when we start talking about Jeremy Grant, who's somebody we talked about briefly earlier, right? Denver is looking at, do the teams that have cap room chase him? So do the Knicks, Hawks, Hornets, Pistons go for him? Yes. Then they better pay a lot. The answer is no. Then they better pay more than MLE. So Grant in this scenario might be 12 mil per year. Grant in this scenario may be 18 mil per year. You see how that kind of negotiation would go. Is he being chased by the Knicks, Hawks, Hornets, Pistons? Are they using their precious cap room to spend on Jeremy Grant, a guy who is basically a 3-and-D guy who you want to have with... Jeremy Grant should be your 4th best player, maybe 5th, reality. If he's your top 1 or 2 players, you do not have a winning team. That's not belittling Jeremy Grant. He's a very nice player, but he shouldn't be your best player. So if you're spending $15 to $8 million, that's a lot. Do they pay more? I think there's a typo. But if you're talking about other teams spending the mid-level, that's perfectly fine. If you're spending 9.3, that's about what you're getting for a borderline starter. So sure, 12 million, that's great. Pay that if you're Denver. And then the issue you get into, and we're going to wrap up with all this so I can get some food before I take my daughter to practice, is let's take a look. Denver. This might not fit. Okay, here's Denver's numbers. Again, these are rough numbers. Okay, let's total that up. Some of these things don't copy very well. So right off the bat, they're under the cap. Total cap. And then again, we're using the notion that things stay flat. Roster charge. Under. And then when we start to look at what's going on with them, well, they probably need to keep Millsap, but cheaper. So let's say Millsap, they need to beat out, not much, but let's say, I'm just going to throw a number in. And let's say they keep Plumlee. I'm going to go cheap, and this may not be realistic. He might cost more than that. And let's say they keep Torrey Craig, also at $4 million. Again, these are made-up numbers. They definitely keep Monty Morris at 1723707. He's under contract. They got to definitely keep Dozier. 1762796. These are, I'm not going to color code these right now. Whoops. Give it a second. Cleaning this up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. Make sure I got everyone in there. Okay, so looking at them, they're re-signing Millsap, and I'm making this number up. Maybe it costs more than that. They're keeping Plumlee, again. Keeping Craig. And that's that. Okay, so now the question is Grant, right? So let's say that Grant, and from our supposition here, they're going to pay him between 12 million or they're going to pay him 15 to 18. So here's 12 million. 12, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Yikes. Give me a second. Clean that up. There's a big difference between Excel and this drives me crazy. Okay. 12 million. Okay. That's one number, right? So we said the tax was 132, 627, 123. And they flesh it out with a vet, 1620564. And we'll just throw in another vet. Maybe they do a 1260564. 1260564. There it is. And let's say we'll do another vet. They could do a rookie minimum. They are over the cap, tax, and bear with me. Under. So they are under. Okay. But if Grant ends up at the high end of that, we're talking 18 million. Okay, now they're over. Okay. So this is not crippling for this team. We have not accounted for their use of the MLE, BAE, of any kind. This is just them basically bringing back the same team and letting go of a Vonleh and adding vets, or maybe bring whatever. But the core of their team comes back, and I pencil in these numbers for Millsap and Plumlee at 10 million. If that's higher, now we're facing more of an issue. But you can see how very quickly, with this team returning, now they are in that 5.718 range. They're not in the 9. They're not going to get a biannual, right? If we take these numbers here, let me copy that here, Paste it here. Okay, get rid of Rondo. Don't need that. Oh, it was 5718. It didn't come. Okay. I think I have one too many zeros. I'm going to have to make some macros so that I don't have to copy and paste these numbers all the time and it just fills it in. All right, so if we go back to our initial discussion, which was very Laker focused, but we're seeing how it applies to the Nuggets, right? Bringing back Jeremy Grant, depending on what he gets, is going to limit what they can spend. So if we're in this scenario, they can, instead of using a vet, paying a vet, they could pay that. They are over the tax. But we have to worry about our apron, right? Give me a second. Okay, copy and paste hard cap. So the Nuggets, oops, that didn't take, darn it. All right. I see a few things I'll improve upon for the next stream as far as making this easier for me. Hard cap equals this minus that under, so that works. But that was just using the mid-level. They are not able to use their BAE. And if we apply the same logic here, right? Let's say they try to use their non-taxpayer mid-level. They are over the hard cap. Okay, so this is illegal. So they are losing their MLE, limited to 5.7 mil. So what they end up with is this instead. They do not have a hard cap, not hard capped, and under. Okay. Make sure you can see that. Okay, there's. Okay, so you follow my logic here is that these are the questions that we're going to face with this offseason because it is a poor offseason when it comes to spending power. If the Nuggets can manage to pay Grant $12 million and can manage to combine to pay Millsap and Plumlee $10 million, they use their mid-level, they are hard capped and just barely under it. So they can make that work. They can't use their biannual, but they're taxpayer. And I don't know if the Nuggets are willing to be that. They are definitely a contender. They got to the conference finals. They're definitely in a smaller market. They may not be willing to be a taxpayer. If they're not willing to be a taxpayer at all, which I don't know if they are or aren't, I don't pencil in for teams to go over the tax. I'll pencil it in for the Lakers because of winning a title, and with LeBron, I don't think you say, no, LeBron, we're not going to be a taxpayer to make sure you win another. But technically they might. I'll pencil it in for the Lakers. I can't pencil it in for the Nuggets. Lakers are in a bigger market. I don't know. So they may cap themselves at 132. But let's say they don't. They could still use their mid-level. So the Nuggets can improve, keep Grant, add a player at $9 million. But that depends on how much they're paying Millsap and Plumlee. And if they're not paying them at all, they have more flexibility. But then you lose some valuable pieces, even though Millsap is very much towards the end of his career. I thought he was absolutely necessary for them the last few years, even though his regular season numbers aren't down. Robert Horry gets a lot of blame for not being a great regular season player, but who cares if the goal is to win in the playoffs and he's there delivering in the playoffs? Millsap was very much that for the Nuggets. Same thing here in this column, but we are overpaying Grant necessarily. Maybe it's overpaying, maybe not. But let's say the market demands that that's what you pay him. Well, now you're limited to 5.7, and you're right up against the hard cap, but there is no hard cap. So you can go as high as you want, but you're a small market team. How willing are you to go that high? And I think what I'm going to do is we wrap this up. I'm going to punch in a number here for you guys. Tax. Let's say that the Nuggets are indeed paying, we'll just round it at $140 million. It's not that expensive in tax. So this team would be paying, if they're paying, oops, that did not work. Try that again. Here, let's just do total equals, I'll fix that in a minute. Make sure you can see it. Scroll down a little bit. Okay. All right. And then if we total that up, so they could be paying $151 million for this particular roster. And I'm not saying they do or don't. Under normal circumstances, if you are a contender, paying the tax kind of comes with the territory. However, we're in this shutdown. We're in a bad situation where we don't know where the Nuggets are financially. They may be hesitant. I have no idea. And so I'm not going to pencil them in for that. But just be aware that this is what teams are going to be looking at. These are the kind of discussions and why these tax lines are so important. Because for the Nuggets, that's going to determine how much they can pay to keep Grant, how important is it keeping Grant, and how necessary does it become to maybe trade Will Barton or Gary Harris? Can they trim salary different ways? Do they need, trading? That's the core of it. I don't know who else they would trade. Obviously, Michael Porter, I think, has shown that he's a potentially important part of what they're doing. You can argue he has deficiencies defensively, and they showed enough that maybe they can cash out Michael Porter and get a more ready-made veteran to win, including with Will Barton. I mean, we could get into those, weeds, and, this is not where we're going to go today. We can look at any one team and get into the weeds with them. But I'm just kind of showing that there are ways. So maybe they trade some of these dudes and get out of it. Depends on how much they value Grant. But if you're the Lakers and you want to offer him the $9 million and they're offering him $18 million a year or $12 million a year, you're not going to compete, I don't think. Hey, is that my brother? So you just hear it in one ear? I don't know. It's only coming out of one ear. You can hear it, though. All right, so for the next stream, like I said, this should be my worst stream because it's my first one, and I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to the technical side of it because I'm using new stuff. But I think it went pretty well. Let's see here. Keeping Bol, sure they'll keep Bol, no problem there. He is taking a look. I think he's a free agent. I think his 2A was 1 year. Let's take a quick look. Even if you're keeping Bol, I still keep Plumlee. No, he's on a 2 year. Yeah, Bol's under contract, so no worries. He's under contract. I still would keep Plumlee, but I would pay him low enough. I mean, I'm paying Plumlee $4 million. That would be sort of like a short-term thing for Plumlee to. If you're thinking playoffs, you would want Bol to be ready for playoffs, but I wouldn't lock it in. I wouldn't take a step back. I mean, the Nuggets were third or fourth best team in the entire playoffs. So I think Plumlee was important against bigger teams like the Lakers. Let's see here. Let's see if there's any other questions. What in the free agent class being weaker this year? A lot of teams with similar contracts. With the free agent class, this is from Adam G. With the free agent class being weaker this year and a lot of teams with similar contracts to offer, what do you see big picture? I hope I've kind of given that. That's kind of the point. When we talk about how there's only a handful of teams right here, these are the teams that will set the market for the top players. If they are not paying for those guys, the top players, which there aren't that many, are they using their cap room to acquire players via trade? A very common thing is for guys like Solomon Hill. Who's the dude from the Grizzlies? Chandler Parsons, right? I mean, there's a long list this summer of guys who were traded, who were not traded because they're players. Alan Crabb, right? Teams needed either large trade exceptions or cap room to absorb them. So the Warriors might be a team that are maybe willing to take in someone making 17 million. But there's very few big trade exceptions, and there's not many teams with cap room. So if I'm the Pistons, if I'm the Hornets, I'm using my cap room to take on an unwanted contract and taking in young players and draft picks as part of the rebuilding process. If I can get a young dude and some picks and take on somebody who doesn't really matter and I end up cutting or whatever, that's a win. I don't necessarily want to go out and sign a guy and overpay them to play for my team. I don't want the Pistons to sign Jeremy Grant. I don't want the Hornets to sign Jeremy Grant because I don't think he helps them big picture. That's my opinion. Hawks, we can certainly argue it because at least that's a team that wants to take that step into winning. And the Knicks have so much going on, it's really hard to, figure out what they're going to do and who they are. But after that, you're talking about mid-levels or returning to the same team. That's it. That's all those dudes, all those free agents are looking at 9.5 roughly. It's about a $10 million average if you get a 4-year deal on the mid-level, the big mid-level. And keeping guys. And the more teams that keep guys, the less that they'll have, less of those teams will have that 9.3. So it's just like a give and take. More Lakers keep KCP and pay him more and pay Rondo more. They don't have that 9.3. If the Nuggets pay enough to Jeremy Grant, they don't have that 9.3. Depends on what happens with Millsap and Plumlee, and it also depends, do they make trades to get out? But if you get out of money, how do you get out of money? You have to make unbalanced trades, so other teams have to have that cap room or a trade exception. So yeah, the Warriors want Will Barton. They could just absorb him. But is that the guy they want to use their $17 million on? Maybe. I don't think so, but maybe. Let's see. I don't think you can keep Plumlee and Millsap for $10 million, but that's not the point. It's not the point of whether you can keep them or not for that number. I'm throwing in numbers. I'm assuming that there's a low market for Millsap and there's a low market for Plumlee. We're building out maybe a best case for the Nuggets. $10 million for those two guys. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. It's not the point. And thanks for doing the stream. Thank you. Great content working with bated breath for the next. Right. And you get to the last point. How many players are actually worth 9.3 in this market? I have a list, but that's not what we're going to hit today. A free agent list. That would be a fun stream to go through that. It would be fun to look at all the teams that will, what are the exact teams that have 9.3? What are the exact teams that will have 5.7? What are the exact teams that will have cap room, which we touched on? And then what's the list of free agents? And we get to Gallinari. I don't know if the Thunder want to keep him because in my opinion, the Thunder have a zillion picks and should be trying to move out of Chris Paul, should be trying to move out of Steven Adams, who they're probably not going to keep long term. Move out of Dennis Schroeder, whatever, and you can keep him long term, maybe. I don't know. But I feel like they're kind of in transition. I think they, especially in this year where they may not have fans in the seats, this is the year for the Thunder to not make the playoffs, right? Making the playoffs for them, good money for a small market team like that. Very valuable. This year, is it that valuable? Maybe this is the year to be bad. So I don't think they re-sign Gallinari. So then he's got to look at the Knicks. He's got to look at the Hawks, the Pistons, the Hornets. I'll throw this out there. His former agent runs the Pistons, Arntellum. I believe his agent is Arntellum's son. It's Mike Tellum. I could be wrong. Michael Tellum. If I have a name wrong, I apologize. And so I can at least tie Gallinari to the Pistons cap room based on that. I don't know what the Pistons do, but you can at least argue it that maybe there's an in there. Gallinari, I'm sure, would love to go to the Knicks, right? Why not? They have money. Be a nice place to play, and if that's a place to get money. If they don't, and if the Thunder aren't paying, then he's sort of limited to $9.3 million. Then I think he's calling the Nuggets and the Lakers and other teams that are at the top that might have that money. But if they're paying Jeremy Grant, Lakers are paying KCP and Rondo to reward them, then they don't have that money. This is what I think we'll find as we go through a give and take. 30 teams, most of them are going to be in this position. And we don't know the answer because we don't know the tax line and the cap. If I'm the players, I'm trying to get the teams to go with a higher tax line so that they're more able and willing to spend money. Maybe the cap is lower and the tax line is higher so that, if I were to compromise allow teams to pay that 9.3 because the tax line is higher. The cap number itself, the escrow, work that out, find a solution, artificially raise the tax so that it's higher, so that maybe the tax is 145, so that everybody has the opportunity, so that for the Nuggets, they can keep Grant, keep Millsap, Plumlee in some variation, and use their 9.3. To me, that's the negotiation I'm having if I'm the union to the league. And the league would probably say, no, we don't want our team spending this much money. Especially because the more that they spend, you still need to get to that 50-50 split, the bigger the escrow is going to be. And that's the upshot of it. If the teams are spending more, the players all are getting less because there's going to be that split. We covered that earlier in the stream. So I think that's the core of what I've been trying to teach today. I hope this was fun. At some point we had around 50 or maybe 60, which is kind of cool considering this is my first. We're down to about 30, so I appreciate those who stuck it out. I'll look at it and see if was I looking at the camera? Should I be looking at the camera? Am my position right? I'm new at this. I only used this view most of the time. I can jump around to different views. Green screen seemed to work. The video of my kids playing in the background didn't work because we couldn't get the audio to turn off because I don't have the time on stream to figure that out. So if this was my worst stream, I'm pretty happy. Some people said they only heard it in one ear, the left ear. I don't know. I'll have to look. Maybe I'm coming in mono, so that's a possibility. Definitely open to suggestions. So let me copy this in one last time. Copy the link in case you missed it, which would be a shame, but let's say you're revisiting it. That's the Google sheet where we did the work. It's read only. I do personal tutoring at a fee. Hit me up. Happy to do it. The idea there is that we cover a lot of the same ideas, but in depth, and I'm not the one running the numbers. I might do the first team, but then after that, you're doing the team. You're running the numbers, and the process of doing that is a greater learning experience. You're just going to learn it. It's generally for people. I teach people who are going to be agents, who are taking the agents exam, young professionals who are looking to get into the NBA field. Anybody who's interested, but it is a fee thing. So this is fun. This is free for now. One day, if I get enough viewers, I'll be able to monetize this content. And tips would be nice. I will throw one thing in here. Oops, wrong window. Because I am trying to support myself and my family. And I understand not everyone has the means. But if you do, this is my Patreon. And if you have the opportunity, I hope that worked. If you can sign up and do some money, that'd be great. I'm also on Venmo, where there's no fee. Let me make sure I give you the right handle. That would be kind of stupid, wouldn't it? Pardon me, I'm going to look at my phone right now. We're at the end of the stream. I'll have this stuff more thought through for the next ones, but I think we did pretty well. I'm just going to make sure that I give you the right Venmo. Yep, okay. All right, and if anybody has the ability or the inclination, that would be awesome. Venmo, at Eric Pincus, Patreon. If you sign up for the Patreon or if you Venmo, then I'll hook you up with my Discord server where I have a bunch of people of similar interests chatting about this stuff, and you can get me more directly. I talk all hours whenever, and it's easier to get me one-on-one conversations, and I'm more likely to say something in a private conversation than I would where everyone can quote me and cite me and then say I'm saying that, you know, Plumlee's re-signing for this amount and all that. These are made up numbers. Don't cite me on any of this stuff. None of this is for publication. So there we have it. I think that's it. Thank you, chat. Thank you, everyone, for participating. We good? Any last words? Nope, I think that's it. Everyone's gone.